The scripture lesson this morning is from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 7, verses 1 through 10, based on the Good as New translation. After a long teaching session in the open air, Jesus went back into Capernaum town. A Roman army officer there had a servant he was deeply attached to. The servant was very ill and looked likely to die. The officer heard about Jesus and sent some of the religious leaders to him to ask him to come and heal his friend. When they came to Jesus, they spoke warmly on the officer's behalf. They said, "He really deserves your help. He loves our people and built our house of worship." Jesus went along with them, but when he was close to the house, the officer sent some friends out to Jesus with a message. "Please, sir, don't put yourself to any trouble on my account. I am not fit to invite you into my home. That's why I didn't come to you in person. But I'm sure if you say the right words, my companion will get better. Your profession is like mine in a way. We've both been given charge over others by a higher authority. The soldiers in my unit obey my orders. The people who look after my house do as I ask. One word from me is enough." Jesus was very impressed by the officer's way of putting things. He turned round to the people who were with him and said, "I tell you something. I haven't come across any of my own people with as much confidence in me." The messengers went back to the house and found the officer's servant in good health. The Gospel of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
Dear friends, this is a perfect biblical story for our Rutgers Church Pride celebration. Reading and understanding it, we can rejoice in modern theological scholarship, and this story assures us of God's radical love. It affirms the loving, caring, and inclusive ethos of our faith community. Every single step affirms who we are and gives us reason to rejoice. And friends, we begin with the theological scholarship first, because we want to build our personal faith and of our community on a solid foundation encouraged by Jesus' genuine example. And here I can say that as early as 1984, German New Testament scholar Gerd Theissen of Heidelberg University suggested that the centurion's servant was actually his lover. Theissen was followed by a number of progressive and queer theologians who developed persuasive linguistic, textual, cultural, and historical arguments further. We are told, for instance, that the centurion's servant was his beloved male companion, and it is very likely he was his romantic partner. And that interpretation is further supported by context. When you review biblical healing stories, for instance, those people who are asking for healing are almost always close family members. So here you go. And too often we have been told and read about Jesus' healings, and we get caught up in the miraculous nature of them. But in ancient world, miracle stories were everywhere. Every movement and even every village had a few. What made Jesus' healing stories special wasn't the miracle itself. It was how Jesus did it, who he touched, why he cared, how, for instance, he broke the local rules. Jesus wasn't afraid to reach out to those whom others avoided. He put compassion above human rules and religious rules. He saw people, not concepts or dogmas. He didn't check papers, passports, or purity codes. And that's exactly the message of today's healing story, perfectly fitting the Pride Sunday. Some say Jesus didn't say anything against same-gender loving relationships. I would say not only that. This story shows us that when a Roman centurion came asking for help for his beloved companion, for his love partner, Jesus didn't question it. He just healed him. That's the real healing miracle here. Healing and divine validation for our community. We've been living that out for decades, blazing the way of inclusive love in our church, in our city, and in our denomination, being on forefront of all those struggles. And so, dear friends, now is the time for us to rejoice. We rejoice. Jesus' compassion breaks barriers. You can join me in reading it there. Join me. It's a call and answer. So, we rejoice. Jesus' compassion breaks barriers. We rejoice. God's love crosses lines. We rejoice. Divine grace overcomes prejudice. But we are not done with this story, dear friends, yet, because divine love is more expansive. Not expensive, but expansive, like reaching out. I don't know whether I pronounced that correctly. I constantly struggle with pronunciation, especially of those vowels. But in our faith community, we experience non-judgmental, welcoming and affirming divine love, and it has real life consequences in our relationships and also in our world. And so we know God's love is not limited by human boundaries, by nationalities, or by any ideology that seeks to divide people into us and them. I'm grateful that under my predecessor, Reverend Byron Schaefer, the session took out the national flag from our sanctuary. And it wasn't that we don't feel like being Americans, and especially with the independence coming soon, we know what kind of gift the freedom is, and not having kings or tyrants over us, as we learned and remembered last Sunday. But it was a quiet gesture and a powerful one. A sign that here, in this sanctuary, we gather not as members of a nation, but we gather here as people of God under grace, which is universal, crosses boundaries. And during my years, we simplified what flags fly on our corner above Broadway. Now it's only the rainbow flag, a banner of hope, banner of inclusion, banner of our shared humanity. Just like in our story, we see divine love breaking through tribalism, through the ancient hostilities between Jews and Romans. Just imagine, Romans were occupying power at that time. And yes, there was these gestures of goodwill from the Roman soldier, as we heard about it in the story, but not necessarily that would pay much. When a Roman centurion came to Jesus asking for help for his beloved companion, Jesus did not interrogate. He didn't hesitate. He just healed. That's the real healing miracle here. Healing and divine validation for our community. We are doing God's work. We've lived this love out for years, and we are still leading the way. And so, dear friends, we rejoice. Jesus' compassion breaks barriers. We rejoice God's love crosses lines. We rejoice divine grace overcomes prejudice. And dear friends, no, we are still not done with this, our story today. There is more for us. Because if we believe in divine love that includes everyone, regardless of orientation or national identity, then we must also say, God is above and beyond our human religious categories, as important as they might seem to us, and as a professional of faith are important for me. But I have to humbly admit, divine love must not be pigeonholed. God transcends our religious systems, our dogmatic or ideological boxes, our labels. In this story, a Roman centurion, most likely Roman pagan, helped build a synagogue. And Jesus, a Jewish healer and teacher, who just finished teaching his sermon on a plain in the Gospel of Luke. In the Gospel of Matthew, it'll be the Sermon on the Mount. But this Jewish healer blessed the love of a Roman soldier. We've lived out this same spirit of inclusive, interreligious love in our community. And yes, it isn't always easy. One of the most beautiful events in our sanctuary was Coming Out Muslim. Do you still remember that? We filled this place. It was bursting in seams, which we hosted for our LGBTQI plus Muslim neighbors. And recently, I want to share a story. I told somehow distant and probably kind of more fundamentalistic or evangelical relatives during my visit to Czech Republic that our small church, or relatively small, powerful in spirit, but smaller in numbers, that our church had welcomed and sponsored 5 refugee families. And to their shock and to my holy pride, I told them, all 5 were Muslim families. Because neither human need nor divine love stops at borders. And neither need or love draws lines between religions. And I mentioned that it was not easy always. I'm just looking at Lisa and Christine and thinking of Amiris, how kind of surprised they were to find a lesbian couple. But, you know, eventually most of them, not necessarily Amiris, made a peace with that. Oh, okay. I'm saying not Amiris, okay? I think that, you know, and that is that we need to be those who are exemplifying that and taking it out and challenging ourselves and our neighbors, but challenging them in love. Just like in our story, divine love transcends even the most dangerous tribal and ideological barriers. When a Roman centurion came to Jesus asking for help for his beloved companion, Jesus did not ask for religious permission on any one of those higher ups. He didn't weigh whether it was acceptable for himself. He saw the love in that request and that care, and he healed him. And that's the real healing miracle here. Healing and divine validation for our community also. We've lived it out, and we are living it out now. We are still doing it. And we will keep challenging ourselves and challenging the narrative around us with that. And so, dear friends, that's the time to rejoice. Jesus' compassion breaks barriers. We rejoice God's love crosses lines, and we rejoice divine grace overcomes prejudice.